We're at Arper for the Blueprint collaboration interviews, and today we're sitting down with the British architect responsible for the V&A Exhibition Road Quarter and MAT in Portugal, Amanda Levete.
You know, collaboration is it's a big word, but it's a very obvious word for architecture, because for me anyway, architecture touches on every aspect of what it is to be human, and we are social and cooperative creatures, and if you like, it's collaboration that sets us apart from any other species. So of course it's completely integral to the way we think, it's integral to the discipline and the practice of architecture, which is an extraordinarily complex discipline because it spans such a wide range of disciplines in a sense. You cannot begin to design without thinking of the discipline of engineering. So of course it is central to the way we imagine, and it's central to the way that we work. Where does it start for us? I think for us, collaboration starts at the front door and we take off our shoes. It starts on the ground, and there's something about the act of taking off your shoes. It's a great leveler. It kind of strips away a layer, and we ask our consultants and we ask our clients to take off their shoes too. And it's, you know, it wasn't a conscious thing at the time, but I think the subliminal message is that you're not in for a passive ride. We're all in it together, and that for me goes to the very heart of architecture. Collaboration is a very active form of engagement. It's the opposite of being passive. And to be engaged and to be active means that you challenge the status quo. We will challenge a brief, we will challenge a client, we will challenge engineers, we'll challenge makers. That's kind of in our DNA, is to push limits, to explore the limits of things. Certainly when I was at the AA, I was quite a kind of singular student. I didn't really collaborate. When I went into practice, when I worked for Richard Rogers, you're part of a team, so it's, you know, you learn very quickly how to collaborate. In the 20 years that Jan and I were together in Future Systems, collaboration to the office was really expressive in technical collaborations with engineers, collaborations with contractors. It wasn't a deeply collaborative office in the sort of design process. Then when I founded ALA, I have 3 directors, much younger than me, from 3 different continents. And we work together on all projects. And it is a more, yes, in that respect, the design process is more collaborative. And I think the other big difference, quite simply, from Future Systems is that we always start a project with a conversation, never a sketch. Because a sketch, for me, it commits too much too early. And by starting with a conversation, you leave open the potential for things, and you spend more time figuring out what are the right questions to ask. You know, how do we define the purpose of this project? And I think, you know, a conversation is inherently more collaborative than a sketch. You know, a conversation is always 2-way, 3-way, 4-way exchange. It's rapid fire. That's the nature of conversation. A sketch is very much, you know, I'm putting this on the table and now let's debate it. It's subtle, but there's a difference. I mean, what was very interesting about our commission from the V&A was that it came about after the demise of the Libeskind project, which is a competition that he won for the exact same site in 1997. And so when they came back to us and with a competition brief, the brief had completely changed, and the brief was for gallery space below ground for all their headline shows. When we won the competition, there were two things that we did that the other competitors hadn't. And interestingly, they were the two most risky parts of the project. But despite that, our design was selected. That was a very radical alteration to the Grade 1 listed screen on Exhibition Road, the Aston Webb screen. And the other was a decision to put the staircase down to the gallery within the museum itself rather than in the courtyard. Now, much easier, much cheaper to put the staircase in the courtyard, which is what everyone else did. But by doing that, you neuter part of the courtyard, you neuter part of the exhibition space below, the whole kind of raison d'etre of this project, with all the paraphernalia that goes with an entrance. Going through that process and getting over the kind of hump of understandable nervousness at the sort of the challenge, the engineering challenge. Really, it wasn't easy, but it tested our relationship with the V&A at times, but it deepened it. And there was a very nice thing that came out of that, which is that during the construction we had to dig this very deep hole. And normally when you dig a very deep basement, you put a superstructure on top, multi-storey building, but we weren't. We were just putting a courtyard. So the uplift of the earth, the slab wants to float, so you have to tension down the slab. So we had tension piles that were 50 metres deep, and literally in order to hold down the slab, prevent it from floating. And Cambridge University, who work closely with Arper, came to the site, the engineers from Cambridge, and they were so taken with the kind of audacity of the challenge that they asked us, if we'd asked the V&A, if they could install purely at their expense and as a piece of research, fibre optic monitoring cables in the tension piles, because they believe that the movements that will be recorded over a number of years may disprove aspects of the elastic theory, which is the theory that engineers use to calculate this kind of thing. Now, if that is the case, we will have advanced knowledge in a way that we didn't set out to do. And that is the result of collaboration between a university research department of engineers, the engineering consultants working on our building, our audacity in proposing something in the first place, and the client, most importantly, getting behind the project and believing in its realization. In the museum in Lisbon, the MAT, the Museum of Art, Architecture and Technology, it was the most fantastic site on the River Tagus, looking southwest. But yet there's a kind of paradox, which is that this wonderful waterfront is cut off from the old part of the city by railway tracks and a highway. And as kind of outsiders coming in, it was clear to us that to make this museum a successful destination, we had to find a way of getting people over the road, because there are not enough bridges along that highway and that cross the railway tracks. So our first move, if you like, was to persuade the client and then the municipality that actually not only do we have to design a museum, but we needed to design the bridge to get to it. And that was a big piece of work. And it is that move, which maybe felt quite small at the time, but it is that move that has made it the success that it is, because it is so easy for people to get there. We designed a bridge that started on a town square on the other side of the railway tracks and spans over the highway with just 2 columns and lands on the bridge. It's all at grade. There are no steps. And then, the roof itself becomes a town square, a public destination. The notion of seeing this project as not just a cultural project, but an urban project was completely central to the way that we went about it. We are fortunate enough to have been commissioned by Laura Lee to design the Maggie's Cancer Centre at Southampton Hospital. And Southampton Hospital is one of these super hospitals. It's huge. I mean, medically speaking, it's extraordinary. It's right out there with the best, but it's, as a master plan, it's a disaster. It's just an accretion of buildings with no kind of relationship to each other. It's just evolved without a plan. And it's a hard landscape to work in, and surrounded by a sea of car park. Our notion was to imagine a piece of the New Forest sitting in the middle of the car park. So imagine that this was a piece of the New Forest that had just remained while everything else around it had been developed. So that when you were in the oncology centre, instead of saying, oh, look over at that red tower or whatever, say, see that garden over there? That's where the Maggie's Centre is. And when we presented that to them, they were fantastically receptive. I mean, they were a wonderful client who taught us a lot about how to think about people in different situations, in situations that you've maybe not experienced yourself, in a deeply, deeply personal way. And it's been a real privilege to work with them, to learn from them. And we've started on site now. And we've also, we've been collaborating with Kumela, who are a family ceramics business based just outside of Barcelona, who made the tiles for Matt, who we worked with, for many, many months developing a special tile. And we wanted to use ceramics for the Maggies. We wanted it to really, the materials of the building to speak of the earth, to speak of nature, to have colours that picked up the different seasons. And with Laura actually, we went to meet Kumela in their factory, in their workshop, and pick the colours and imagine new colours that are completely bespoke for Maggie's. So the relationships that we have with engineers, with makers, with clients, it is innately collaborative. And architecture is also a very consensual discipline, and that's sometimes misunderstood for compromise, but it is far from compromise, because one of the most important roles, I think, of an architect is that the ability to persuade and the ability to take people along on a journey. And that's what I mean by consensual. I don't mean compromise, I mean persuade. And in a sense, as architects, we are the guardians of a collective vision for a project. The vision is not just the architect's vision. The vision has to belong to everyone. And we demand a lot of the people that we work with. We demand a lot from our partners. And to be able to get from them what we need, what the project needs, everybody has to buy into this vision.